Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Holly. This is going to be a new series I'm starting all about tarot. This video is going to be kind of an introduction. We're going to go into the history, the origin, the etymology of tarot, where some of these things come from. I've really been wondering about this, so kind of got a bug in my ass to do a little research. Tarot, in my opinion, is a beautiful, creative, and healing form of divination that can also be considered a form of art in its own right. I have personally dabbled with the cards for many years before I decided to ever take reading seriously. I've kind of been doing this now for about a decade, so I recently got certified. I'm very excited about that. And this is the deck I used to get certified with. I just felt like I had to get a new one for this energy, this new chapter in my life. It's called the Moon Power deck. That's the back. Gold siding. Can we just... Gorgeous. I love the illustrations, the imagery. I love how it reads. I love the symbolism. I find it very intuitive, even if it might not come across that way. I'm gonna leave a link down below to the Etsy shop for this creator. It's very, very talented. But I prefer imagery in my decks that kind of echo themes of the original Rider-Waite deck, simply because of the intuitive symbolism. It's a lot easier to read and help the client understand with metaphor as well. But there are many decks that exist that harbor no similarity at all to the classic imagery that we're used to seeing. There are pip decks, there are oracle decks. You can even read tarot with regular old playing cards, which is a thing. And I'm very interested in that, although with all the years of reading behind me, I'm nowhere near comfortable enough to go there. As a self-proclaimed pagan, I use divination in much of my practice, and it started with tarot, as I'm sure it does with many of my fellow practitioners. It was a major catalyst for my spiritual awakening and journey thus far, which is why it is so important to me, and in many ways, very representative of that process. But where did something so ingrained in our collective unconscious come from? How did they become so representative of the occult and taboo subcultures that have been until recently? Something to keep in a box hiding under the bed from the rest of the world that just doesn't understand yet. There has been, I feel, a major shift in acceptance and opening of minds, if you will, with the growth of technology and the spread of people's voices through the internet. Technology has given us the ability and the space to put out there for the rest of the world, something that people wouldn't have been able to access or listen to or hear or learn if, the internet didn't exist. So, taking all this into consideration, we have a rapid fire of information happening with the internet. Ever since its conception, just things go viral. Before you know it, they're gone. They've had their 15 minutes of fame, and now they're gone. Things just come and go much faster with the internet here. And, that contributes to fast fashion. That contributes to the kind of like throwaway, ultra disposable kind of ideology that we have as a modern society. And with that, there's also a rapid fire with opinions, about religion, politics, all the things. People are hearing about it, reading about it in places that they probably otherwise wouldn't have been exposed to it. This is contributing to an awakening. People's minds are being opened. They're thinking about things that they wouldn't have thought about before, Taking all of that into consideration, the stamp that we get in our minds, the associations that our brains make, when they're triggered by a certain word. What do you think of? Like, what is your first impression when I say the word tarot? What is that? What comes to your mind? For me, it's kind of, I don't know about you guys, fucking Halloween, let's see, black nail polish, Renaissance times, you know, castles and dragons and King Arthur. Let's see, all things spooky, maybe. Hot Topic, Ren fairs. Why is this? These are just some of the associations our brains can make when they're given a topic. They're just historically things that we've experienced next to that thing, and our brain just takes it and holds hands with it and forever associated with that thing. There's something very Pavlovian about that. But now we're going to do this together as a conversation. I'd like to hear from you in the comments how you first came across tarot, how it came to you. How did you come to learn? Did somebody teach you? Did you have a mentor? I personally am self-taught. I very much wish that I had, you know, a kind of guidance with that, but a lot of us are self-taught and there's nothing wrong with that. I did get a lot from the things that I've read, and, you know, as much I'm sure as, you know, a human person could have given me. So what I know about the history of tarot isn't extensive, but off the top of my head, let's see, it originated in Italy, was it? Or Europe somewhere. Allegedly, why the pictures on the cards are so detailed and the use of symbolism is so heavy is because people weren't literate back then. All they had was reading pictures. So what does the word tarot mean? We're gonna get into some of the etymology here with that and talk about what tarot originated as. It didn't originate, despite what you might think, as a tool for mysticism or fortune telling, rather. It came about as a card game. You know, think of your average playing cards, you know, the suits. You have your 2 of clubs, you know, 2 of hearts, etc. And you have your court cards in there too. It's pretty similar to tarot if you really think about it. And you can even read tarot with playing cards. According to Sweet Tooth Design, it was a card game called Tarocchi, or Tarocco, believed to be played by nobility. It has many names. It was known as Triumphi or Tarok in Germany, translated to trumps. Legend has it that tarot is known to have 4 fathers in the 3 decks called the Visconti trumps. This is not akin to what we consider tarot to be now. They were played for a game called Triumph, which they say is similar to the rules of bridge. According to EVS translations, the word tarot is a direct borrowing from French, although ultimately originating in Italian. I found 2 different theories as to the etymology of this through this source. One is that the word comes from the river Taro that runs from the region of Italy that the cards originate from. Another theory is that the name comes from the Arabic translation of Turuk, which means ways. The exact etymology is fairly unknown. These are just pieces of the puzzle that we called history someone happened to write down. Tarot begins to have mystical connotations, I'd say, around the 19th century. You think Aleister Crowley, you think parlor games. Aleister Crowley actually credited with one of the most widely used modern decks called Thought. You've probably seen it. It's out there. It's very popular. He is someone I'm very interested in doing a little biography on. Tarot begins to have mystical connotations around that time. when we go into the 1800s, the 19th century rather, we have to go into kind of a discussion about the birth of like spirituality and that big boom of spiritualism that kind of took place around the Civil War era. And this all became such a popular thing with people because of how many family members they had out there dying. They had people just go out, lost a whole family, lost all the men in their lives to the war. And with that, we go into spirit communication. It's a really big thing. Cold reading, mediumship, it's a very big thing. People were profiting off of people's losses, essentially. And, you know, we see the Fox sisters. Those are two girls out of upstate New York, upstate New York. They became very widely known for their little tricks and antics during seances. So I'm gonna do a whole separate video about all of that, but here we are in the 1800s, 19th century. According to EVS, the first time we find written evidence of divination usage of the tarot cards is in the Oracles of Francesco Marcolino da Forlì from 1540, where the cards are used to select a random oracle, yet have no meaning in themselves. So we kind of see the evolution taking place here. I think we don't read them like we do until much later into the 20th century. Those things kind of finish evolving for us. Other evidence of cartomancy is found around such places like Egypt, ancient Iran. We have links to the Kabbalah, the Indian Tantra, the I Ching even, with their esoteric meanings and usage. And there you have it with tarot in the 18th century, how it's kind of developed out of this demand, if you will, for spirit communication, and there kind of grew a space for it out of that. So from 18th century parlor games, we leap to a time when Gerald Gardner founded Wicca in the 1950s. So we have that happening. That is a whole discussion. I'm gonna have a whole separate video on Wicca. We see progress, and we see more literature, at least. From the 50s into the 60s, where we have the hippie counterculture movement, into the 70s with, you know, you think more psychedelic, looser thinking, kind of a spiritual evolution happening there within those last 3-ish decades or so. But again, I want to talk about that. I have a lot I want to talk about here, and that's just a huger discussion than what I have time for now. But when other counterculture spiritualities kind of popped up around the 80s and the 90s, we see figures like Scott Cunningham, Starhawk. These figures kind of pop up and become very widely known themselves. I want to touch upon why, with the 90s coming back, and we see aesthetics like that coming from movies like The Craft, Practical Magic, and so this resurgence, this new kind of trend, if you will, is kind of why I believe it's so prevalent among young people today. So this was kind of an in-depth look at the history and the etymology of tarot, its origins, and how it's come to evolve over the centuries into what it is now, where it comes from, what kind of connotations are carried with it, and what kind of associations we make in our heads when we think about tarot. There's many contributing things that go into the collective unconscious when it comes to things like witchcraft and paganism and tarot and other forms of divination. But again, this video is a prelude to a series, and it's the first in the series, so kind of acting as an introduction. And then in the next video, I'm going to go into the difference between the major and the minor arcana, the history of the etymology with those, and from there we're going to talk about court cards, and yeah, we're going to go into it. We're going to do a really in-depth deep dive into tarot. There's going to be a video dedicated to every single card, and this is just something that in my journey of learning tarot that I wish I kind of had to piggyback off of, because as many resources as I've had, books that I've read, videos that I've watched, it's always been kind of like a brief, I don't want to say spark notes, I don't want to say summary, but I feel like there could be so much more to go into, and you could spend a whole 30 minutes talking about something that a lot of these sources I've come across brush over in like 5 minutes. So I want to go deep into that, do some very heavy research, and if you're interested in that, stick around and be a part of the discussion down there in the comments. So I'll see you in the next one, guys.